I didn't even think that this situation would change my life forever. My name is Alina. I'm 20 years old. And I never thought my life would one day turn into a story worth telling to millions. It all began on that very evening when I first felt that the air in our house suddenly became different, thicker, heavier, almost tangible on my skin. My mom had gone to the store, promising to be back within an hour. And I stayed alone. Or rather, not quite alone. Ever since my mom remarried, there was someone new in the house. A man I had never known how to behave around. His name was Oleg. He was 35. And there was something about him that words could hardly capture. He wasn't talkative, but every gesture, every glance seemed deliberate. He kept his distance, and yet that same cold restraint made him even more enigmatic. That evening I was lying on my bed with a book in my hands, but the letters blurred in front of my eyes. I felt his presence somewhere nearby. The sound of footsteps in the hallway was too clear, too real to ignore. I took a deep breath, my heart racing, as if knowing he had stopped right by my door. I didn't know if he would come in, but every second of waiting felt like an eternity. Everything inside me screamed that it was wrong, and yet at the same time, a strange aching feeling rose in my chest. A longing for this moment to last. His voice came low and calm. "Alina, are you awake?" Those words made me shiver. It was nothing unusual, just a simple question, but the tone was different. I didn't answer right away, only turned a page, pretending to read. But I knew he could already tell. I was listening to every sound, every breath. A soft knock followed, and I realized how even a knock could be louder than thunder. Slowly, almost silently, the door opened. His figure filled the doorway, and suddenly I saw him differently. Not as someone who just lived with us, but as a man whose presence couldn't be ignored. I swallowed hard and tried to smile, but my lips trembled on their own. Oleg stepped closer, stopping by the desk. His gaze lingered on the book, then lifted to meet mine. "Am I disturbing you?" he asked, his voice gentle but filled with tension, as if he too was fighting something inside. I shook my head, unable to speak. The silence grew so heavy I could hear my heartbeat. And in that very second I realized, this was only the beginning. He stood so close that I could feel his breath, even though he hadn't taken a single step toward me. The lamp on the desk cast a soft light, and the shadow of his figure fell across my hands. Almost involuntarily I closed the book, unable to focus anymore. "You look tired," he said quietly. And for the first time I caught something personal in his voice, something meant only for me. I nodded, though in truth exhaustion had nothing to do with the way I felt. Oleg sat down on the edge of the desk, and the movement seemed so natural, as if he had always belonged here, in my room, in my life. His eyes lingered on my face, and I suddenly noticed that he wasn't just looking at me. He was looking through me, as though trying to understand something I couldn't put into words myself. Inside, everything trembled, but it wasn't fear. It was something new, unknown, and strangely desirable. "I remember you when you were just a little girl," he said suddenly, and I flinched. "And now you're grown. Sometimes I feel like I didn't notice how quickly the time has passed." Those words made me smile, though my eyes burned with emotions that came too close. I didn't know what to answer, so I simply lowered my gaze. Silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking of the clock. Slowly, he rose and stepped closer, stopping by the bed. His hand brushed the book I held, his fingers gliding across the cover so carefully, as if it were the most fragile thing in the world. In that moment, I lifted my eyes to his. There was nothing accidental in his gaze, only something deep, serious that made it hard to breathe. "Are you cold?" he asked suddenly, and that simple question carried everything else he didn't dare to say. I shook my head, but my fingers clutched at the edge of the blanket, and he noticed. His hand touched the fabric as though testing if I was truly warm. I didn't pull away, though I could have. The moment stretched endlessly, and somewhere in the hallway a floorboard creaked. as if the house itself was witness to this strange, quiet closeness. I knew it was a fragile line, and any word, any movement could shatter it. But in that instant, I didn't want to break it. I wanted the pause to last forever. I didn't know how long that pause lasted, but suddenly he smiled faintly, as if brushing away unwanted thoughts. "You know," he said quietly, "it feels too stuffy in here. Want to go for a drive? Just change the scenery." His offer caught me off guard, yet somehow it felt natural. Something inside me stirred. The need to escape these walls where every minute weighed too heavily. "Where?" I asked, trying to hide the hint of excitement in my voice. "Doesn't matter," he replied. "What matters is the fresh air. You like evening drives, don't you?" I nodded, and he glanced at his watch, as though debating whether it was the right moment. A second later, he reached for the closet, grabbed my light jacket, and held it out to me. "Get dressed," he said calmly, and in that calmness was a strength I couldn't resist. A few minutes later, we stepped outside. The night was cool, the asphalt glistening after a recent rain. His car waited by the curb, its reflection stretching across the puddles like a dream. I slipped into the passenger seat, my heartbeat thundering in my chest. He started the engine, the soft growl cutting through the silence. We drove quietly, the city lights thinning out until only the road and the sky remained above us. The radio played softly, some old melody, and it was the simplicity of it that made the moment special. "I know a place," he said suddenly, quiet enough to think. I turned to look at him. In the glow of the dashboard, his face seemed different, calm, focused, though his eyes still carried that quiet tension I had always noticed. We drove out of the city, the air growing fresher, clearer. The road curved through the trees, and soon faint lights appeared in the distance, a small overlook. "Do you like watching the city lights at night?" he asked, and I smiled. "Yes. It feels like the whole world is breathing beneath you." Oleg nodded, and for a moment, I caught a warmth in his gaze, as though my answer meant more than I realized. We pulled over and I stepped out. The city stretched before me, glittering and alive. The breeze brushed through my hair, and for the first time in a long while, I felt light again. Oleg stood beside me, his hands in his pockets. He didn't say a word, but his presence spoke louder than anything. I glanced at him secretly and understood that these minutes were special. Here we didn't need loud words, we didn't need explanations. It was enough just to stand side by side. We stood for a long time, admiring the city lights, when suddenly a faint smell of gasoline reached us. I frowned, turning back. A thin wisp of smoke was curling from under the hood. "What's that?" I asked, my voice trembling. Oleg's expression grew serious as he leaned closer. "Looks like it overheated," he said calmly, inspecting the car. His composure calmed me a little, though my pulse raced on. "So we're not going home tonight?" I asked with a nervous laugh, trying to lighten the mood. He looked up at me, his eyes steady. "We will," he said firmly. "Just not right away." He pulled a flashlight from the trunk and added, "Let's take a short walk. There's a forest nearby, maybe even a lake. The car will cool down, and then I'll try again." His voice was so steady that I couldn't help but follow. We walked along a narrow path into the woods. The moon lit the way, turning everything into something mysterious, almost magical. The trees whispered above us, and somewhere far off an owl hooted. I walked beside him, caught between fear and a strange sense of safety. "Do you come here often?" I asked, breaking the silence. "Sometimes," he replied. "It's easy to think here when your head's too full." His words resonated in me, as though he was speaking for both of us. Soon we stepped out into a clearing, and I froze. Before us stretched a lake, smooth as glass, reflecting the moon. "Beautiful," I whispered. Oleg nodded, though his gaze was fixed elsewhere. "Do you hear that?" he murmured. I strained my ears. From the trees came a sound like footsteps crunching leaves. My chest tightened. Maybe an animal? I guessed, but he shook his head. Too heavy for an animal. A few seconds later, a man appeared holding a flashlight. I flinched, but Oleg instantly stepped forward, shielding me. Easy, the man said when he saw us. I'm the forest ranger. Thought poachers wandered in. He smiled and the tension drained away. They exchanged a few words, and it turned out he was just checking the area. Before leaving, he warned us. Be careful, it's not safe to linger here at night. Once we were alone again, I exhaled with relief and smiled. That was a little scary, I admitted. But exciting, Oleg added. And there was a rare lightness in his voice I hadn't heard before. We returned to the car, and sure enough, it had cooled down. The engine started smoothly. Sitting back in the seat, I glanced at him secretly. That night became special, not because of the lake or the ranger we met, but because for the first time we had gone through something together. We drove back in silence, the road stretching through the dark forest and the occasional glow of streetlights. The soft hum of music filled the car, but I barely heard it. My thoughts lingered only on the night we had just lived through. The ranger, the lake, the sudden breakdown. It all felt like part of a story written long before us. I stole a glance at Oleg. His hands rested firmly on the wheel, his eyes fixed on the road, yet behind his focus there was something else, an inner dialogue he was having with himself. Were you scared? He asked suddenly, not looking at me. I hesitated, then answered honestly. Yes, but only at first. After that, with you it felt safe. He gave a faint smile, and I knew my words meant more to him than he let on. Sometimes, Alina, he said softly, life gives us moments like this for a reason, to remind us who is really beside us, and what we truly feel. His words sank deep into me, stirring something in my chest. I turned to the window, watching the city lights grow closer, brighter. And suddenly I felt sorry the night was ending. Thank you, I whispered. For what? He asked, glancing at me. For taking me there. For showing me the place. For being there. He didn't answer, just nodded. But there was a warmth in his eyes I couldn't ignore. We reached the house. The car stopped, and the silence felt heavier than before. I fumbled with the door handle when his voice stopped me. Alina. Sometimes the most important words should be kept inside until the right moment comes. But I want you to know one thing, tonight I saw you differently. And that will never change. His tone was calm, yet so steady that I couldn't look away. I nodded and stepped out of the car. The night wrapped us in its cool air, but inside I carried warmth. We walked up the stairs, each lost in our own thoughts, but I knew. This night had drawn a line. From this point forward, everything would be different. And though I didn't yet know where this road would take us, I was certain we would remember it forever.